Howdy, and welcome to an impromptu video on texturing. Basically what I'm going to go over today is your diffuse, your specular, your normal, and your environment map for doing pattern welded or Damascus metals for blades and getting them looking good in Skyrim. The diffuse texture, I know this looks like almost nothing and it pretty much is going to be left mostly just dark gray. We have a few details in here. I have a scratches layer that is just an overlay of a scratches stencil. It's nothing real spectacular, just enough to give just a little bit of contrast. And then we're going to do an inlay that you cannot even see on the diffuse. It'll be silver for this one, but if I turn off the main layer, you can see it here behind you, seeing the environment. Nice and smooth as far as the transition between light and dark with those. Now these, you can brighten them up a little bit, but they'll come out glaring white in the engine. It's better to leave them fairly dark. With the normal map, this is almost completely flat. I have the scratches layer in here, and it's only set to about 20% opacity. And when I get down to my inlay, the silver inlay down at the bottom, again, you can barely see it. It's there, but you can barely see it. You don't really want much of a noticeable bump at all with that. This alleviates a lot of artifacts. With the standard Skyrim, something like this, you can scale down to half its size and save it uncompressed as ARGB 8x32. But there's issues with the updated engine for Skyrim Special Edition, and you pretty much need to compress them. So this will eventually be saved as DXT5, and with just mild divots, you can get blocky artifacts with that compression format. So this bottom layer here, this one that I'm turning on and off, is one solid color. The only thing that's showing on this are the scratches. Let me set this aside. This is our specular map, and you'll notice that it's almost completely black. If you brighten this up too much, it ends up looking like your blade is smeared with Vaseline, and it just doesn't look good. If you have something like this and you keep it like solid black, I have a bad habit of just flood filling them black and forgetting that when saving them out of here as DXT5, this is the specular map, this is the alpha channel for the normal map. If you leave it solid black, the NVIDIA's saving tools will remove it, and you don't have an alpha channel anymore. So we just throw in, showing you, here's the wireframe. Find a spot where there's nothing and just put in some white scribbles. Literally, you can take a brush and just do some white scribbles on it, or white scribbles, there we go, like that, and that's enough. Just as long as it's out of the way of your UVW map, you're fine. But when we get back down, again, this is still fairly dark here. I've left the scratches in as their overlay. They barely show on this, but it does make a very subtle difference. Now, these are left dark, again, because it will glare way too much. It looks like Vaseline. All of the business happens in here, in your environment map. On this one, I'm using my Woots. I spent a lot of effort trying to get something that looked like it. This is basically designed to reproduce crucible steel, the effect of the dendrites in it, and it does a fairly decent job. For the blade, I've done a slightly brighter edge, and then this is the back. Here, let me turn the. This is the back of the blade. We have our side here, and from this edge here and down, it angles into the blade. I did just a little bit darker here to give a bit of contrast, and then when we get down to the inlays, they're set really bright, so these will reflect real bright silver or real bright gold depending on what color you have them in the diffuse map. You can go hog wild on this layer here that I'm turning on and off, the woots. This is one of my Viking textures, and you can use wood grain, things like Wood Workshop, or say like Filter Forge or any of those. You get procedural wood textures. There's a number of sites that have pretty cool templates and stencils for pattern welded steel. And then with this one, I have the pattern welded that's done in a few different layers, and then the bright edge to give the polish on the steel on the blade. And then these are basically bloomer inlay runes that these will show up. These are not on the diffuse. The diffuse for this weapon here looks just like this. It really does not have anything showing. All of it happens in your environment mask. So with these, this texture here you save as DXT1 RGB. It can be flat with no alpha. Same thing with your diffuse texture. You can save this as DXT1 RGB. Now with our normal map, make sure you save your PSD files out separately, so if you have to go back to them, you can. With this one, I'm going to layer and then flatten image, discard hidden layers. That's just my wireframe. I'm going to take the specular map, select all, and in this case, since I have layers, I'm going to Control Shift C to copy merged. And we go back here and hit channels. Normally you click this and hit new channel. I already have an alpha in here, so we have our alpha. This was my first test, what you're seeing here, and it didn't work. So, and then we hit V. Excuse me. We come back to RGB, to layers. It's flattened. We make sure it's flattened. And then the filter, your NVIDIA tools, normal map filter. And normally I'll set this for a blade 5 or 6. Let's go 6, and you'll see almost nothing. It's almost completely dead flat. If I zoom in, you might be able to see a little bit of detail in here, but not much. This gets saved as DXT5 ARGB, or if you're on regular Skyrim, that's for the special edition. If you're on regular Skyrim, as much as I'm loath to use uncompressed textures, you can scale this down to half its size and save it as ARGB 8x32. And what that is if we save this as DDS, go to the desktop, and I hit save, you have your DXT1 at the top, no alpha, your DXT5, which is your full alpha, and then if you scroll down, you want 8888 ARGB, not XRGB, ARGB 32. That one. That's uncompressed, and that won't give you the artifacts. Okay, now let me bring up the handle. Since the handle is metal, give me 1 second here. Okay, with our handle, this is several layers of different items on top of here. I kept them separate so I could adjust them for the specular map. Our main metal background again is very dark. That bright background, what you're seeing there, is the woots again. So it's a very dark metal. And then our wear and tear highlights are just soft. It's set at color dodge right now, but let me show it to you on normal. It's just white with, I cut this out so it wouldn't affect the other parts. It's just a white gradient, and then you can change it to your blending mode, color dodge, and then adjust the opacity accordingly. This one was, I just did a line selection and did stroke to give it the edge inlay, and then this was just a fill pattern. Again, they're set to color dodge. If I hit normal, you'll see it's just a bright white flowery pattern. And again, you can change those up or down. This is an inlay, so it's supposed to be just a little bit brighter on the diffuse. On the normal map, again, it's very, very plain. You'll see this is where I've darkened everything down, and all I've done with these, I've changed them to pin light instead of color dodge, just so it gives just a touch of the lightness, and the opacity for this is only 5%. We just want a slight bit of a bumpy ripple on it. And then what I did is I copy merged and then pasted it into itself and then brightened this up. And the only reason I brightened this up was I have a hole in the back of the handle, so I could do a nice dark hole. And the hole is just a circle with a feathered edge. And it makes it fairly believable. For the specular map, I added a bit of grunge. Now, you can see colors in this one, but these colors don't show on the specular because it's grayscale. But again, dark with, this is just a little bit lighter. And then where all the business really happens is in your environment map. This is what you're gonna see reflecting in game. Again, the metal part here is just kept dark, and then these are just brightened up to make the silver inlay really reflect the light. Now, I have it set up in 3D Studio Max. 3D Studio Max, sorry, a little under the weather today. The wireframes you're seeing in the background, these circles, these are from a dome light that Noe Sanchez made. Again, thank you, Noe. That is one of the coolest things I have ever used. And this wireframe back here is a cube map. It's just a box, and it's had its normals turned inside out. And I set up one of my cube maps on it. The lighting is why you only see this in black with the wireframe. And then when we render that out, this is what we're going to get. This strange, blurry, god-awful looking thing in the background is the cube map that I use for testing. And then that's it reflecting on here. And you'll notice how you get your nice brights, well, your contrast, your bright and darkness coming off. And with the normal map being mostly smooth with just the scratches, it really stands out here. It does a fairly decent job. And then I think I have a shot of it somewhere here. Let me find it, yes. This is it in game, and you can see how it's going to give reflex. Again, this is done with a custom cube map. This is not one of the vanilla cube maps. But for metals, if you want to use one of the vanillas to keep your file size down, use the one that's called Shiny Glass _E. For steel, it pretty much works the best. But to really bring it to life, you're going to want a custom. But yeah, hopefully this helps, and I will probably need to go in more depth with another video pretty soon. Take care, guys.